What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to my lovely hobby of doing videos that hopefully will help you out with information or just make you relax and forget about the day-to-day stress that life throws at us on a regular basis. Today, we are going to talk about the recent port of God of War to the PC. Now, the game was initially launched in 2018. Been almost 4 years now, but it was only on the PlayStation, so us PC gamers were left out of the loop. But the good news is that Sony finally started porting its exclusive to the PC, which is it's great news in my humble opinion. Without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about 5 points that I love and slightly hate about the new God of War port on the PC. I'm gonna start with the bad bits, so that we can end on the high note hopefully, and move on with our days in a lovely way. Okay, first and foremost, frame drops and poor optimization. Let's start the bad bits by talking about the very poor optimization on AMD GPUs at least, that the game has proven to have up to this point. I have an RX 6800 XT, which is a current gen GPU, and it is definitely an above average card, and should have no problems in running this game smoothly on my resolution of choice, which is 1440p or 2K as others might call it. I usually don't venture into 4K territory because I appreciate a smooth gameplay with high frame rates more than the sharpness that a 4K experience will give you. But much to my disappointment, this game is all over the place when it comes to frames. In close spaces it runs smoothly as you might expect, and it's a joy to play, but sometimes you just have to turn a corner or be in an open area and you just feel the FPS's dip into the abyss. And it makes for a very frustrating experience, at least for me. It's really bad when you have a smooth 90 plus FPS gameplay experience and you turn a corner and you just see your frames go down to like more than 50% sometimes. It's really bad. If you're a PC gamer, you know what I'm talking about, and you know how that feels. And while that doesn't make the game unplayable, it definitely pushes me away from it. I just don't want to turn up this game and play it after a long day of work. So people with AMD GPUs are forced to wait for a patch, which hopefully when it arrives it will solve the problems that the game currently has. Hopefully. Or there's always the option of playing the game in its current state, which in my opinion would be a shame considering how fun the game really is when it runs smoothly. So unfortunately that's where my experience with this game will end for now, because I can't wait around for the developers to fix it as I want to work other videos and other games. I'm sure I'll come back in a couple of years when the game will be 5 years or older, just to see if it's still worth your time and it is still fun and do one of my usual videos on it. But for now, unfortunately, I'll just stop playing it. Now, the way I see things, the only good thing about this is that it looks like the Nvidia users don't get affected by this glitch or whatever it is. The game runs smoothly and people are not complaining about it. Okay, up next is the really wonky mouse input lag / sensitivity. The movement in the game lacks any precision and feels really weird. It's the first time I've really experienced this kind of feeling when I play a video game, and it's not a good one. It makes it feel like an afterthought, and this was also one of the things that hindered my experience with the game. I mean, couple this with the frame drops that can hit at any moment, and you can imagine how disappointing the gameplay can be at times for somebody that wants to play the game on a mouse and a keyboard. Which, on a PC, is quite often, you know. Now, you do have your typical lock-on mechanic that almost every third-person game has on a console, but unless I play a Souls-like game, I really don't want to use that. I want to have precise mouse movements so I can hit my opponents right when and where I want to. Now, that being said, you can still do a decent job without using the lock-on if that's what you want, so it's playable and enjoyable once you get used to it. But because of the poor optimization, it's just a big no thanks, I'm gone! Also, the fact that you don't have a sensitivity slider, you just have like 10 levels from which you can choose the input from, shows that they did not really care too much about properly optimizing the game for PC. They just did enough, guys, just enough. Which for some people is okay, but not for me. No FOV slider. Why does this game not have an FOV slider, guys? Both Horizon Zero Dawn, that god-awful game which I made a video about, and Days Gone had this ability, and yet for some reason Sony chooses to go back in time and just ignore this option completely. You constantly feel zoomed in while you walk around. Add that to the previous 2 points that I've talked about, and you can see why I personally am really disappointed with the mechanics of the game. What makes it even more infuriating is that I actually like the game when it works properly. It's just not worth it at the moment. Now, that being said, if you search for it, you will find mods that will help you modify the field of view, but this should be integrated into the game by the people that actually released the game, and I find it quite pathetic that it's not that way. Up next, we have the faulty lock-on. Now, as I previously stated, I didn't mess around too much with the lock-on while playing this game, but unfortunately, the little time that I did do that, it was all over the place. From auto switching to other opponents to just completely unlocking. This feature is more of an annoyance than help. I mean, it's meant to be locked on an individual. It's stated in its goddamn name. And yet somehow they messed this up also. So let me get this straight. First, you don't optimize the game properly. Then you make it hard to use the mouse moving around. And then the one feature that theoretically should help you combat all those faults of the game doesn't actually work. Wow, Sony, just wow. Now last but not least, I wanted to talk about the fact that this is a worse port than Days Gone was. Sony's first big port of one of its exclusive was Horizon Zero Dawn. In my opinion, that was an extremely flawed port, but the good news was that after that, Days Gone came out and it was an objectively better port in every single aspect. The performance was way better. So, progress was being made by Sony in the port department, right? But now, we go back to the low standards of the initial port. The uncertainty that this demonstrates forces me to be extremely cautious next time I think about picking up a PlayStation port. Because, with 2 out of 3 games it was just not worth it to play the game in the first few weeks or months of their launch. So maybe next time I just play the patient card, wait a few months, maybe a year, and then pick the game up for less money and when it's all patched up and it's working properly. Hopefully, right? It's gonna work properly. Okay, now that the bitter pill has been swallowed, let's move on to the good points in this game. I want to talk about Kratos in the first good part about this game. There is no other way of saying it other than I really dig Kratos. He is the video game version of the type of person that you really don't want to mess with in real life. He or she has a certain presence that you feel instantly and it demands respect, but not because he is actively trying to intimidate you or that his ego is bigger than the Eiffel Tower. No, this individual demands respect just through its sheer life and professional experiences. He usually and hopefully is a man or woman of principle that functions after certain rules, and above it all, his integrity is intact and constantly tested in a world that values true valor less and less every day. Maybe I'm just seeing that in Kratos because that's the person that I try to be myself, but one thing is undeniable, you don't want to fuck with this guy. Up next we're gonna talk about the fantastic graphics that this game has. If I put aside the problems that I've previously talked about and talk strictly about the graphics of this game, I will say hands down, no doubt in my mind, this is the best looking game that I've ever seen. On 1440p, everything on Ultra, it really looks fantastic. It's one of the very few games that forced me to stop at times and just stare around me. And for that, I gotta say, hats off to Santa Monica Studio. It almost blows my mind as much as back in 2003 when I first saw Warcraft 3 on the PC. For some reason that moment is still imprinted in my mind. I remember exactly every detail that was happening at that point. I was obviously playing Counter-Strike at the internet cafe, and the guy next to me started playing Warcraft 3, so I just turned my head to see the elven base move around in all its splendor. It was glorious, guys. Next up we're gonna have the satisfying combat. Although I find it hard to believe that a guy that kills gods for a living has to hit some zombies multiple times with its axe, I find the combat in God of War quite satisfying and fun to experience. When everything is working smoothly, once in a blue moon in my case, the combat and moment-to-moment gameplay is a lot of fun, and it makes this game live up to the hype that surrounded it back in its launch day, unlike Horizon Zero Dawn for example. At number 4 we're gonna have the father and son dynamic. Remember how I described Kratos a little bit earlier? Well, there's nothing more interesting and fun to watch than an individual that has those characteristics, but is put in a situation where he feels like a fish out of water. The father-son dynamic is extremely interesting to watch. Kratos has a clear objective and he is pretty clear-cut about what he wants. That is, his son to become stronger and to survive the harsh conditions that are surrounding the two. Does he do a good job? Well, that depends on how you look at things. Speaking the truth can be a slap in the face of somebody if you don't do it the right way. But if you sugarcoat it a little bit, you might end up getting better results from the conversations that you have. So no, I don't think that Kratos is doing a good job by transmitting his message, although his intentions are 100% correct in my eyes. Sometimes it is okay to comfort somebody a little bit before you get straight to the chase with them, but the previously mentioned interactions just add to the charm of this beautiful but faulty relationship between the two. Number 5, great level design. I really like the level design and the map of God of War. I love that it's not open world, man. Just like every single wannabe high quality game out there today. Not everything has to be open world, quite the opposite. I most of the times prefer a linear, well done experience as opposed to a bloated game that is too big for its own sake. In that regard, this game reminds me a lot of Jason and the Argonauts from 2009. That game was absolutely beautiful. and quite underrated if you ask me. I love that game so much that I still remember when I first finished it. The reason why I remember is because it was on a New Year's Eve. The fireworks were getting closer and closer, but I really wanted to finish the game because it had its claws in me. While the game is linear, each realm is divided into large non-linear sections that can be explored outside of the main story, and most of the times you will be rewarded for your curiosity. I very much enjoy that, as I never really understood the hype of every game needing to be an open world. Guys, that's gonna be it for today. I will mention though that I am appreciative of the fact that Sony, whatever, starts putting out its exclusives. It's cool because we can all experience it on the PC. While I understand why they are not very keen of doing those things from a business side, I can understand them, but at the same time, it's nice for us as consumers to be able to play the games that other people already experienced on their platform. Now that being said, fix the goddamn game, Sony.